A ceasefire in Syria's Idlib Province has just come into effect after months of heavy bombardment by Syrian government forces and their Russian allies. The truce was agreed by the presidents of Turkey and Russia. Idlib is the last region still controlled by the jihadists and rebels who are backed by Turkey, who have been trying to overthrow the Syrian President Bashar al-Assad since 2011. The UN estimates almost 1 million people have fled their homes since December because of the fighting. In the early hours of this morning, Russian airstrikes killed 16 civilians sheltering in a farm in Maarat Misrin. Our international correspondent Orla Guerin was there. Her report, filmed by Göktay Kurultan, contains some upsetting images.
Working by flashlight to reclaim the living from the rubble. The target here, inexplicably, a poultry farm, which became a refuge for some of Idlib's displaced. By day, a refuge no more. Just hours before ceasefire talks began in Moscow, this devastation was Russia's handiwork.
Last night, I was slept here. This is my home. Here, when the Russian airport bombed.
This is from the bomb?
Yes. Civilians. We are civilians.
And they were killed as they slept, though the Syrian regime and its Russian backers say they are targeting terrorists. Well, when you take a look around here among the scattered belongings, you can see that this was a home, a place where parents were trying to keep their children safe. Some of the toys are still here, and the dishes are smashed at my feet. What possible justification could there be for bombing a place like this, full of civilians? But in Idlib, this has been happening day in and day out. And there's the sound now of more explosions. We've been hearing bombings in the distance since we arrived. Ahmed tells me it's fine if he dies, but he's worried for his children, who by chance were not here last night. Where do you think you and the children will sleep tonight? I don't know, he says, wondering if anywhere in his broken homeland is safe. Not the local hospital. It's a target, like all medical facilities.
Wound in the head.
Here we found victims of the airstrikes, like Qasim, who is 9, as old as Syria's war. I want to be a doctor, he says, to treat patients so they get better and no one dies in Syria or the rest of the world. Will a ceasefire bring an end to the agony here? Or will this merciless, multi-layered war keep doing its very worst? Orla Guerin, BBC News, Idlib.
Well, almost 1 million people have been displaced by the fighting in Syria, and it's been putting further pressure on Turkey, which already has almost 4 million Syrian refugees. Turkey opened its border to Greece last week, accusing the European Union of inaction on refugees. Since then, thousands of migrants have been trying to cross into the EU, as our Middle East editor Jeremy Bowen reports.
Syrian refugees have learned to be sceptical about ceasefires. In western Turkey, thousands who escaped the battles before Idlib and other Middle Eastern wars followed a fence up to the Greek border. They went because Turkey's President Erdogan finally came through with his threat to pressurize the EU by creating a new refugee crisis. Greece kept its gates closed. For a generation that grew up with death, with war stealing their chances of education, it was yet another blow.
My future has gone. That's why I think more about the future of my children. I want to have a house for them, give them a good life where they don't need to rely on me or anybody else to support them.
This family with 6 children had made it to Greece, where they said the police stole all their money and burnt their ID papers before they were sent back, trying to salvage some dignity.
There are women here and we don't have toilets. What should they do? We have girls 10 and 11 years old. They can't go in the open in front of people.
If you look at all the leaders and the countries who've interfered and been involved in the war in Syria, can you look at somebody and think, yeah, they're to blame, it's their fault?
The main person responsible for us as Syrians is Bashar al-Assad. As a president, it's a pity that you kill a child or harm a human being just to stay in power.
These people are pawns in a much bigger game. Its roots lie in the catastrophic international failure to stop the war in Syria. And the players in the game are the big military powers who've intervened in the Syrian war in their own interests, with little or no regard for the safety of millions of people. A local Turkish man gave out food. Let Europe see this, he said. I hope you're ashamed. It was cold. He made a fire of plastic rubbish to heat his baby son's milk. Most of them slept out in the open. 3 sisters were under these blankets. No tents, no tarpaulins, no hope. Jeremy Bowen, BBC News, Edirne, Turkey.